All right, so are you ready to dive into the mind of the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett?
Always ready.
Okay, good, because he's been making some moves recently
Yeah.
that have really got people talking, selling off some big holdings in Apple and Bank of America,
Right.
sitting on a ton of cash,
Yeah.
and then bam, buys big into these three companies that
Yeah.
have left people kind of scratching their heads.
Yeah, it's definitely not the classic Buffett playbook.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Yeah.
What is going on? We're going to unpack these surprising buys and try to figure out what they tell us about Buffett's strategy, maybe even pick up some wisdom we can use ourselves
Yeah.
in our own financial journeys. So are you ready to unravel this investment mystery?
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Okay. So Buffett dives headfirst into Occidental Petroleum,
Okay.
snagging a cool $405 million worth of stock.
Okay.
Then dips his toes into Sirius XM Holdings,
Uh,
grabbing $113 million,
wow.
and rounds it all out with a $45 million stake in VeriSign. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, Occidental Petroleum, Sirius XM, those don't exactly scream classic Buffett.
Right.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
Let's start with Occidental, or OXY, as it's known on the stock market. It's a global energy company focused mostly on oil and gas, which, might seem like kind of a surprising choice,
Yeah.
given that everybody's, shifting towards renewables.
Especially for Buffett, who's known for his long-term vision and his kind of aversion to risk. You'd think he'd be more into, solar panels and wind turbines than oil rigs.
Right. But here's where it gets interesting. OXY stock has been down 21% this year.
Wow.
So is Buffett seeing opportunity where others are seeing danger? Is this a contrarian play, believing that oil and gas still have some life left in them?
Well, a true contrarian investor buys when everyone else is selling,
Right.
believing that the market is undervaluing that company. Now, that could be the case here. But it's worth noting that Occidental isn't just sitting on oil wells. They're also, dabbling in carbon capture technology
Yeah.
and other low-carbon initiatives.
So maybe he sees them as a bridge between the old energy world and the new renewable one, playing that long game, recognizing that the transition won't happen overnight.
Exactly. And remember, Buffett isn't just buying a few shares here and there. Berkshire Hathaway now owns more than 10% of Occidental.
Whoa. So this isn't just like a passive investment. That 10% trigger means that he has to disclose his stake immediately. And it also gives him some serious clout within the company. He
Yeah.
can actually, influence their strategy,
Yeah.
push them further into the renewable space.
It's a really interesting dynamic. He's not just an investor, he's a potential power player in the future of this company, and maybe even the energy industry itself. Now let's shift gears to another head scratcher, Sirius XM. This one's a real curveball when it comes to understanding Buffett's typical investment style.
Yeah, you said it. They're the king of satellite radio. But let's be honest with each other. With everybody streaming music these days, their stock has really taken a beating. It's down 57% this year.
Wow. That's a very steep drop. And it really raises the question, does Buffett think satellite radio is about to make a comeback? Or is there something deeper going on here?
Okay, so maybe he believes they have a loyal subscriber base,
Yeah.
especially, among drivers who
Yep.
might not always have access to streaming. Or maybe he sees an opportunity for SiriusXM to evolve,
Yeah.
maybe partnering with or even acquiring streaming platforms to stay relevant.
That's a really good point. Think about it. SiriusXM already has that infrastructure in place to deliver audio content nationwide. What if they leverage that to become a major player in the podcasting world? Or partner with a streaming giant? Offer some kind of bundled service?
Now, that would be a game changer. But even if they just stick with satellite radio, it's worth remembering that not everybody has embraced streaming.
Right. Some people prefer the simplicity and the curated experience of satellite radio. Like it's the difference between choosing a radio station and creating a tie list. Sometimes you just want someone else to decide what you're going to hear. There's something to be said for that. In a world of endless choice, maybe SiriusXM offers a sense of curated comfort that appeals to a certain segment of the market.
It's definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
Buffett might be betting on the power of those niche markets in a world that's increasingly dominated by tech giants.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that sometimes the most unexpected investments can lead to the most interesting insights.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too deep into those insights, let's take a look at the third company Buffett added to his portfolio, VeriSign.
VeriSign. The company that makes sure you end up on the right website when you type in that web address. Talk about a critical piece of the internet's infrastructure.
Absolutely. They're like the gatekeepers of domain names and internet security. And in a world that's increasingly reliant on the digital realm, that is a pretty powerful position to hold. And their stock performance definitely reflects that stability. While those other two companies that we talked about have seen some pretty significant drops, VeriSign is down just a measly 1.35% this year.
Yeah, talk about weathering the storm. This seems like the closest thing to like a classic Buffett pick out of the three.
Absolutely. It's a company with a wide moat, a term that Buffett uses to describe a company with a really strong competitive advantage that makes it almost impossible for other companies to, you know, encroach on their territory.
So in VeriSign's case, their moat is the fact that they basically run the internet's address book.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to imagine anyone else stepping in and taking over that role.
Exactly. And they've built such a solid reputation for reliability and security, which are paramount in the online world. You know, it's like the foundation of a house. You need it to be strong and stable for everything else to function properly.
But even with a seemingly unshakable foundation like that, there are always challenges.
Right.
Like the internet is constantly evolving, new technologies are emerging, cybersecurity threats are becoming more sophisticated.
Right. You're right. Complacency is never an option, even for a company like VeriSign. They need to stay ahead of the curve, constantly innovating and adapting to maintain their edge.
So maybe Buffett sees an opportunity for VeriSign to not just maintain its dominance, but to expand it.
Right.
Perhaps he envisions them branching out into new areas of internet security, or playing a bigger role in shaping the future of the digital landscape.
It's a really astute observation. Remember, Buffett isn't just looking for companies that are doing well today. He's looking for companies that are going to continue to thrive for years to come.
He's thinking about what the internet's going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years, and betting on those companies that he believes will be essential players in that future.
Precisely. Now, let's take a step back and look at all three of these investments together. What do you think Buffett's overall strategy might be here?
Well, on the surface, it looks like he's really diversifying his portfolio, branching out into industries that he hasn't traditionally focused on.
That's true. You've got energy, entertainment, and internet infrastructure. Three very different sectors. It's not the concentrated approach that he's been known for in the past.
Yeah, but maybe that's the point. Maybe he's recognizing that the world is changing at an unprecedented pace. And a more diversified approach is kind of necessary to navigate this new landscape.
It's like he's hedging his bets a little bit,
Right?
acknowledging that you can't predict the future with absolute certainty. So it's best to spread your risk across different sectors.
And within each of those sectors, he's chosen companies that are facing challenges, but also have this potential for significant growth and adaptation. It's like he's saying, I'm not afraid of a little turbulence. In fact, I might even see it as an opportunity.
Exactly. And don't forget about that 10% trigger. With Occidental, Sirius XM, and VeriSign, Buffett isn't just an investor. He's a potential catalyst for change.
He's got a seat at the table and can really influence the strategic direction of these companies. It's like he's not just riding the wave, he's trying to shape it.
That's a powerful position to be in, and it really adds another layer of intrigue to these investments.
It makes you wonder what conversations are happening behind closed doors. What kind of influence is he wielding? And what kind of impact is that going to have on these companies and the industries that they represent?
It's like watching a master chess player, making a series of moves that you don't quite understand yet. You know it's going to be fascinating to watch it unfold.
And maybe, just maybe, by studying those moves, we can learn a thing or two about navigating our own financial chessboards.
Absolutely. So let's zoom in on one of those intriguing moves, the 10% trigger. It's a detail that many might overlook, but it really speaks volumes about Buffett's intentions.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to just get caught up in the headlines about which companies he's buying, but that 10% ownership threshold really adds a whole new dimension to the story.
It signifies a level of commitment and influence that goes beyond just your typical investment.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. What does it actually mean for Buffett to own more than 10% of these companies?
Well, first and foremost, it triggers certain regulatory requirements, like the immediate public disclosure of his stake. But beyond that, it gives him significant voting power and the ability to influence key decisions within those companies.
So he can have a say in things like board appointments,
Right.
strategic direction, maybe even potential mergers or acquisitions.
Exactly. And with Buffett's reputation and track record, his voice carries a lot of weight.
So it's not just about the financial return on his investment. It's about that potential to really shape the future of these companies, and by extension, the industries that they operate in.
It's like he's becoming the silent partner, but with a very loud voice.
And that voice is sure to attract a lot of attention. Other investors, analysts, even competitors are going to be watching closely to see what moves he makes, what signals he might be sending about the future of these markets.
Yeah, it's like a ripple effect. His actions have this potential to create waves that extend far beyond the immediate companies involved.
And those waves could be felt for years to come.
Now let's dive a little deeper into each of these companies and try to really understand the specific challenges and opportunities that Buffett might be seeing. Starting with Occidental Petroleum. What are the key factors that could be driving his investment?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, Occidental is kind of facing this tricky balancing act.
Yeah.
They're a major player in the oil and gas industry, which is facing increasing pressure to transition to more sustainable energy sources.
And that pressure is coming from all sides: consumers, investors, governments, and even from within the industry itself.
So on the one hand, Occidental has this legacy business that is still profitable, but faces a very uncertain future.
Right.
And on the other hand, they're investing in these new technologies, like carbon capture and storage, which could help them reduce their environmental impact and position themselves for a low-carbon future.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this high-stakes gamble. And Buffett might be betting that Occidental can successfully navigate this transition.
Yeah, he might be seeing an opportunity to acquire a company with valuable assets at a discounted price, with that potential to influence their strategy and steer them towards a more sustainable path.
It's like buying a fixer-upper house with good bones. You know it needs work, but you also see the potential for something great if you're willing to put in the time and effort.
And with his significant stake and influence, Buffett could be the one to oversee that renovation project, so to speak.
It's a fascinating scenario to consider. Now let's shift our focus to Sirius XM. What are the key challenges and opportunities that Buffett might be seeing in this rapidly evolving entertainment landscape?
Well, as we talked about earlier, Sirius XM is facing really stiff competition from streaming services that offer on-demand music podcasts, other audio content.
Yeah, the days of dominating the car radio are fading as more and more drivers are connecting their phones and streaming their own personalized playlists.
Right.
But SiriusXM still has that loyal subscriber base, particularly among those who prefer a curated listening experience, or maybe don't have reliable access to streaming services.
Right.
So the challenge for SiriusXM is to figure out how to stay relevant in this new digital world.
Yeah, they need to innovate, expand their content offerings, maybe even explore partnerships or acquisitions to reach new audiences.
And Buffett, with his deep understanding of consumer behavior and long-term vision, might be seeing a path forward for SiriusXM that others are overlooking.
Yeah, he might be betting that they can carve out a niche for themselves in this crowded market, leveraging their existing infrastructure and brand recognition to offer a unique value proposition.
Or perhaps he sees an opportunity for them to partner with or even acquire a streaming service, kind of merge their strengths to create this hybrid entertainment powerhouse.
It's a bold move, no doubt, but Buffett has never been one to shy away from a challenge.
He's always been willing to kind of go against the grain, see value where others don't, and make big bets on companies that he believes have the potential to really defy expectations.
And those bets have often paid off handsomely. So while these investments might seem unconventional at first glance, it's worth remembering that Buffett has a knack for spotting opportunities that others miss.
And his track record really suggests that we should pay close attention to his moves, even if they don't immediately make sense to us.
After all, he didn't earn the title Oracle of Omaha for no reason.
Okay. So we've talked about the challenges and opportunities facing Occidental Petroleum and SiriusXM. Now let's turn our attention to VeriSign. What are the key factors that could be driving Buffett's investment in this seemingly very stable internet giant?
Well, as we've discussed, VeriSign occupies this very critical position in the online world. They're the guardians of domain names, making sure that when you type in a web address, you end up at the right website.
Yeah, it's a foundational service that we all rely on, even if we don't think about it very often.
Exactly, and their dominance in that market has given them this very strong track record of profitability and stability.
But even the most stable businesses face challenges,
Right.
especially in this ever-evolving world of technology.
Yeah, cybersecurity threats are becoming more and more sophisticated. New technologies are emerging that could disrupt existing models, and governments around the world are grappling with how to regulate the internet.
So VeriSign really needs to constantly innovate and adapt
Hmm.
to maintain his position as that trusted guardian of the Internet's address book.
Right. And Buffett, with his long-term vision and his deep understanding of business fundamentals, might be betting that VeriSign has the leadership, the resources, and the vision to navigate these challenges successfully.
He might be seeing an opportunity to invest in a company that is already essential to the functioning of the Internet, with the potential to become even more important as the digital world continues to evolve.
It's a bet on the future of the Internet itself. And with Buffett's track record, it's a bet that many investors will be watching very closely.
So we've examined each of these companies individually. But let's step back and consider the bigger picture here. What do you think Buffett's overall strategy might be, with these three seemingly very disparate investments?
Well, on the surface, it might seem like a random assortment of companies, but I think if we dig a little deeper, we can start to see some common threads.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of threads are you seeing?
Well, first of all three companies are facing pretty significant challenges in their respective industries. Occidental is grappling with that energy transition. Sirius XM is fighting for relevance in the age of streaming, and VeriSign needs to stay ahead of the curve in this rapidly evolving digital landscape.
So rather than shying away from challenges, Buffett seems to be embracing them.
Exactly. He's not afraid of a little turbulence. In fact, he might even see it as an opportunity.
Like he said, I'm not looking for the easy bets. I'm looking for those companies with the potential to overcome adversity and merge even stronger on the other side.
Yeah, it's a contrarian approach, no doubt, but it's one that has served him very well in the past.
And it's a good reminder that sometimes the best investments are the ones that other people are overlooking.
Right. Now, another common thread I see is that all three of these companies have very strong underlying fundamentals.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Occidental has very valuable assets in the energy sector. SiriusXM has a loyal subscriber base and strong brand recognition. And VeriSign occupies that critical position in the internet infrastructure.
So while they might be facing some headwinds, they also have a solid foundation to build upon.
Exactly. And Buffett, with his long-term vision and deep understanding of business, might be betting that these companies can leverage their strengths to overcome those challenges and thrive in the years to come.
So it's a bet on resilience, adaptability, and the power of good management.
And finally, don't forget about that 10% trigger. With all three of these companies, Buffett isn't just a passive investor, he's a potential catalyst for change.
Yeah, he has a seat at the table, and he can influence the strategic direction of these companies.
It's like he's not just riding the wave, he's trying to shape it.
And that is what makes these investments so fascinating to watch. You know, we're not just watching Buffett buy stocks, we're watching him try to shape the future.
And whether he succeeds or not, it's going to be an incredible ride to watch.
It's like having a front row seat to one of the greatest business minds of all time in action.
And who knows, maybe we'll pick up a few valuable lessons along the way.
Now let's take a closer look at the potential implications of Buffett's investments for each of these companies. Starting with Occidental Petroleum, what kind of impact could his involvement have on their strategy and future direction?
Well, as we discussed earlier, Occidental is facing this very delicate balancing act between its legacy oil and gas business and its investments in low-carbon technologies.
In Buffett, with his reputation as a long-term value investor and his growing interest in sustainability, could be a very powerful voice in shaping that balance.
Right. He could push for a more aggressive transition to renewable energy sources, advocate for increased investments in carbon capture technology, or even encourage the company to divest from its most polluting assets.
It's like having this wise and influential mentor, whispering in your ear, guiding you towards a more sustainable and ultimately more profitable future.
And with Buffett's track record of success, it's a voice that Occidental's leadership would be wise to heed.
Now let's consider the potential impact of Buffett's involvement on Sirius XM. How might his investment influence their strategy in this rapidly evolving entertainment landscape?
Well, as we discussed earlier, Sirius XM is facing a classic innovator's dilemma. They have a successful business model that is being challenged by new technologies and changing consumer preferences. They need to find ways to adapt and evolve, and Buffett's investment could provide them with the resources and the strategic guidance they need to do just that.
It's like having a seasoned captain at the helm, you know, navigating the ship through stormy seas and steering it towards calmer waters.
And with Buffett's vast experience and network of contacts, SiriusXM could gain access to valuable insights and opportunities that they might not have otherwise had.
Now let's turn our attention to VeriSign. How might Buffett's investment influence their strategy? as they continue to navigate these complexities of the digital world.
Well, as we discussed, VeriSign occupies this really critical position in the internet infrastructure, but they also face these challenges from cybersecurity threats, emerging technologies, and government regulation.
And Buffett, with his deep understanding of business and his long-term perspective, could provide some very valuable guidance as VeriSign navigates those challenges.
Right. He could encourage them to invest in those cutting-edge security technologies, explore new business opportunities in emerging markets, or even advocate for responsible policies that promote a more stable and secure internet.
It's like having a wise elder statesman at your side, providing counsel and support as you navigate this kind of treacherous terrain of the digital age.
And with Buffett's reputation for integrity and long-term thinking, VeriSign could benefit from his wisdom and influence in countless ways.
So we've explored the potential implications of Buffett's investments for each of these companies. But let's zoom out even further and consider those broader implications for the market as a whole. What do you think Buffett's moves might be telling us about the current state of the economy and the future of investing?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And as with most things in the world of finance, there's no easy answer. But we can certainly speculate and try to draw some inferences from his actions.
Okay, let's speculate. What are your thoughts?
Well, one possible interpretation is that Buffett sees value in companies that are facing challenges, but have that potential to adapt and overcome them.
It's like he's saying, don't be afraid of a little turbulence. In fact, that's where the real opportunities lie.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that sometimes the best investments are the ones that other people are overlooking.
So maybe he's signaling that the market is undervaluing these companies and that there's potential for significant upside if they can successfully execute their strategies.
It's a contrarian view, no doubt, but it's one that Buffett has espoused throughout his entire career.
He's always been willing to go against the grain, to see value where others don't, and to bet on companies that he believes have the potential to defy expectations.
And his track record suggests that we should pay close attention to his moves, even if they don't immediately make sense to us.
Right.
Another possible interpretation is that Buffett is recognizing the need for diversification in a rapidly changing world.
As we talked about earlier, his investments in Occidental Petroleum, Sirius XM, and VeriSign represent three very different sectors of the economy.
Right.
And that kind of suggests that he's not putting all his eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Exactly. He's spreading his risk across different industries, recognizing that it's impossible to predict with certainty which sectors will thrive in the years to come.
So maybe he's signaling that a more diversified approach is prudent in the current economic environment.
It's a reminder that even the greatest investors don't have all the answers, and that humility and a willingness to adapt are essential for long-term success.
Now, another interesting aspect of Buffett's recent moves is his willingness to take a more active role in the companies that he invests in.
Right. As we discussed earlier, that 10% trigger gives him significant voting power and the ability to influence those key decisions within those companies.
And that suggests that he's not content to just sit on the sidelines.
Yeah.
And watch his investments passively.
He's willing to roll up his sleeves and get involved, using his experience and influence to help those companies navigate challenges and seize opportunities.
So maybe he's signaling that in a more complex and uncertain world, passive investing might not be enough.
Yeah, active engagement, strategic guidance, and a willingness to be a catalyst for change might be necessary to generate those outsized returns.
It's a reminder that investing is not just about picking stocks. It's about understanding businesses, identifying opportunities, and working with management teams to create value.
And finally, I think Buffett's recent moves also reflect his unwavering belief in the power of American business.
So even in the face of global economic uncertainty, technological disruption, political polarization, he's still betting on American companies to innovate, adapt, and thrive.
Right. It's a reminder that while there are certainly challenges ahead, there's also tremendous potential for growth and prosperity.
And that's a message that I think we can all take heart in.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that while the future might be uncertain, there's still reason to be optimistic, especially if we're willing to embrace change, invest wisely, and work together to build a better tomorrow.
It's fascinating to think that these actions that he's taking, these seemingly isolated investments, can have these ripple effects outward and potentially impact, the entire market.
Right. It's a testament to his influence
Yeah.
and the weight that his decisions carry in the financial world, People really watch his every move, trying to decipher, the hidden meaning and anticipate the next big shift.
Yeah, it's like he's playing this high-stakes game of chess,
Yeah.
and everyone else is just trying to figure out his next move.
Exactly. And while we may not have, access to his inner circle or his secret playbook,
Right.
we can still learn a lot by analyzing his decisions and try to understand the logic behind them.
Absolutely. So let's bring it back to you, our listener. What can you take away from this deep dive into Warren Buffett's latest moves?
Right.
How can you apply these insights to your own investment strategy or your understanding of the market?
Well, one of the key takeaways, I think, is the importance of staying curious and open-minded. Don't be afraid to challenge conventional wisdom. Look beyond the headlines. Consider investments that others might be overlooking.
Right, like those kind of out-of-character picks that he made,
Yeah.
Occidental Petroleum and Sirius XM.
Exactly. Those investments might seem puzzling at first glance.
Right.
But if you dig a little deeper, you start to see the potential that Buffett might be seeing.
Yeah, that potential for these companies to adapt and evolve and ultimately thrive in the face of all this disruption.
Right. And that leads to another important lesson. Don't underestimate the power of resilience and adaptation. The world is changing faster than ever before.
Yeah.
And the companies that can navigate those changes successfully are going to be the ones that succeed in the long run.
It's not just about picking companies that are doing well today. It's about picking those companies that have the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. Now, another key takeaway from this deep dive, I think, is the importance of understanding those fundamentals of a business.
Right. You mean like things like their financial health, their competitive landscape, their management team, their long-term growth potential?
Precisely. Don't get caught up in the hype or the short-term fluctuations of the stock market.
Yeah.
Focus on the underlying value of that business and its ability to generate profits over time.
Yeah. It's like building a house on a solid foundation. Make sure the structure is sound.
Right.
Before you worry about the paint color, the landscaping.
Yeah. And finally, I think this deep dive also highlights the importance of taking a long-term perspective.
As Buffett himself famously said, our favorite holding period is forever.
Exactly. Don't get distracted by the daily noise of the market or the temptation to chase those quick profits.
Yeah.
Focus on building a portfolio of quality companies that you believe in and hold them for the long haul.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
And remember, even the Oracle of Omaha doesn't get it right all the time.
Right.
Investing is inherently risky, and there's no guarantee of success. But by following some of the principles that Buffett has demonstrated throughout his career, staying curious, focusing on fundamentals, taking that long-term perspective, being willing to adapt, you can increase your chances of building a portfolio that will stand the test of time.
And who knows, maybe someday you'll be making investment moves that have everyone talking.
It's certainly within the realm of possibility. So stay curious, keep learning, and never stop exploring this fascinating world of investing.
Yeah. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Warren Buffett's latest moves. We hope you enjoyed the journey and gleaned some valuable insights along the way.
Until next time, happy investing.